Do more of what makes you happy.
Be yourself, be positive. Just another mindset.
Hello, friends, and welcome to a new episode of the Just Another Mindset podcast. We need a paradigm shift if it comes to our economic and social systems. Let us drive this change together. The Just Another Mindset podcast shares inspiration and tangible techniques on how to create seismic shifts in an outdated system, collectively and for individuals alike. My name is Ismael, and each week I bring to you a relevant conversation, message, or theme that will not only entertain you, but help you to change towards a more meaningful and satisfying life. Get encouraged by listening to successful thought leaders, inspiring individuals, and impressive changemakers. Change from within will last and create positive results for all of us. Let us get inspired and embrace collective changes for the better. Fernando is passionate about society, science, technology, and business, as he is exploring alternatives to improve our well-being. He is aiming for, and living at the same time, a wholesome and fulfilling life in Vienna, Austria. In this episode, we talk about a well-being driven economy. Fernando has developed a concept that puts the human first and not GDP and GDP growth. You will learn about the three major pillars of a well-being driven economy, namely artificial intelligence, economics, and life science. We talk about balance, personal crisis, and mental well-being. Fernando shares his personal story and why he is so motivated to help society live more satisfied lives. Finally, you will learn about practical tips for your own well-being today. And with that, Fernando, a warm welcome to the Just Another Mindset podcast. And my first question for you today is, what is it that makes you happy?
First, thank you very much for the invitation, Ismael. I'm happy to be here. And I really like that opening question. It's a difficult one, but a very, very relevant and important one, I think, for everybody, not just for me. I have learned that with the time. I think I don't have the final answer, but with as life has gone on, I have learned some tips on how to live not just a happy life, but also a healthy life. Because I think one of the first things to be happy is to be healthy on the physical and on the mental side. So what makes me happy? To be healthy, to sleep well, to have time, to have a balance in my life. That makes me happy. In overall, I would describe that happiness for me is like having a balance, a good balance in my life, in different aspects of my life, on my work life, on my personal life, on my friends' life, having time for working on my interests, or my passions, or my cause, but also having time for having a walk, for meeting friends, for getting to know new people, like you, for example. That'd be wonderful to cross paths with people like you. And something that makes me happy currently is the initiative I'm working on. It's maybe we will talk about that later, but it gives a strong purpose to my life, to what I'm doing, because with the time my career has been developed in this direction, and I feel extremely lucky for having had the luck to come this way and to be in the process I am working on currently. So difficult question, short answer, but I think it will continue improving over the time.
And I think you talked on very important components of healthy and indeed happy lives. And I would like to shine light on a couple of them. And for sure, we're going to talk about the well-being driven economy. But before we go there in more detail, Fernando, you talked about passion and you also talked about purpose. And you also talked about what you've learned with time. You are Colombian and you are dialing into this video podcast today from Vienna. Do you maybe want to share with us, and you choose the extent to which, what brought you to Europe? What brought you to Vienna? And yeah, I will leave it with that.
All right. Well, I was born in a middle town in Colombia, as you mentioned, and I was living in that town until I was 16 years old. Then I moved to the capital city, to Bogota, for attending the university. And when I finished my master there, fortunately, I got the best grade point average of the class, of the promotion. So the university gave me some research work to do. And while I was doing that research, I had the luck to come across a paper which was written by a German professor when he was working here in Vienna. So basically, I saw that paper, I found it very interesting, I liked the work. So I Googled the name of the company where it was produced here in Vienna, because I really like the content and the way it was written. When I found the company, I thought immediately, that is where I want to work someday. So that was part of the history. Then I applied once, nothing happened. I got a job in a telecommunications company, in a Canadian telecommunications company in Bogota for 1 year. Those times, Nortel Networks, already non-existing company, but it was a great job in Bogota, actually, working with countries in the Caribbean, Latin America region, customers in different countries. But anyway, the idea of this company I saw on Google, the one I found through this paper I was mentioning, was in my mind. So more or less 1 year after working at my first job in Bogota, I reapplied to this company for another job, another position that was matching pretty well what I was previously doing. So this time I said, okay, this time I make it or I make it. And I prepared everything, all the documents, translated everything, I did the apostilla and all the certifications, sent the application electronically and per post. I did the tracking, I confirmed that it was received by the secretary. I called the secretary, confirmed that was received by the right person. And then after 1 week, my first project manager dropped me a line. At that time, he was at Stanford, and we agreed on having a call. And during that call, he was very kind. We were exploring the topics, getting to know each other. And at the end of the call, he said, "Wonderful, I want to invite you to a personal meeting in Vienna." And I was really surprised, because those days, in those early internet days, early video call days, that was not that usual, at least not in Latin America. So for a Colombian, receiving a personal invitation to give a talk in Vienna, that was really, really surprising and a good experience. And then I came here, presented the topic, and fortunately things went well, and I came here to initially work in that company, then to start the PhD in telecommunications at the Vienna University of Technology.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for the elaboration and sharing that with us, Fernando. And you came to Vienna more than a decade ago, and you already mentioned as well balance. And in our pre chat, we also talked about personal crisis and health a little bit. And maybe you can tell our audience a little bit why you put such a focus on a healthy life on a mental and a physical level for yourself as we speak.
Mhm. Here I'm gonna be no, a lot, very vulnerable, but it was a difficult decision to take this step to be this vulnerable, but I thought it well through, and I do it to create empathy with the people, to help others, and to avoid that others fall in similar situations, among others. So maybe I can continue a bit with the history I was describing, and then I will come to the point where I describe what I care so much about mental and health issues in general. So basically, I came to Vienna. I did my work at the telecommunications research center. I was doing my PhD, and I was having a happy life. Everything was going fine because certainly an improvement in my life when I came from Bogota. I felt from Colombia. I felt there was like a huge load put away from my shoulders when I came here. But at the same time, there were many changes, new language, learning German. And at the beginning, it was quite happy time. But afterwards, there was a period where I had a lot of stress, personal stress, work stress, social stress, that it was not a bit, but a lot actually. And those days I was not aware what the mental health issue was. I barely had here mental health in my life, had no idea what it actually was. I knew about physical health, but about mental health, not really. I think I'm not sure if that happened just in Colombia or maybe all over the world. And maybe with the time we have learned as humanity to talk about these issues because they are becoming less taboo and we are more open to talk about them, to address them. So basically, that amount of stress that I had during those days led me to a very difficult phase in my life, extremely difficult. I had one illness that is called psychosis. It's defined as a disconnection from reality. It's very, very hard, very, very difficult. And one of the things that I want to mention that I remember from those days was that when I was falling sick, when I was falling ill, I was asking myself many times, I'm getting ill, I'm fine, it is fine, it's not okay. And I was not sure because I didn't have any background on mental health. So I was not aware of the symptoms I should care about, the signals I should worry about, when to ask for help to a professional, to a friend. And many times I tried to ask for help, but it was already too late. I was in a situation where myself, I was not able to really look for help because I was really diminished. It was extremely difficult. I could, as I said in a webinar these days, I could write a whole book about that. Is very hard things people usually would not believe happen in those situations. You can make even a movie with many unbelievable things, so very touching things. Maybe this is not the point to go in detail about that, but it's extremely difficult. Those illnesses are those kind of illnesses are very, very hard. You strongly lose your well-being from a psychological point of view. Strongly, very, very strongly. You are diminished as I never have been in my life. So not just in a mental, but in a physical sense is devastating. Fortunately, my brother was able to recognize that even when he was in France, and he was the one who saved me somehow. It was hard, but fortunately I recovered and I wish much better now. So what I would like to do now, and what I am disclosing this, is to later on maybe talk with the people about what I experienced, and with the help of professionals in the health sector, in the mental health sector, give advice to the people and raise awareness, because I'm sure that if I would have known about the symptoms, about these illnesses before falling sick, I would either not fall ill or being able to ask for help at the right time. So I think if we create awareness around these topics, about these symptoms, we can prevent or better handle this kind of issues. That's why I'm interested. One of the main reasons why I'm interested in disclosing these topics and helping others somehow.
Fernando, thank you very much for sharing that and for being able to be vulnerable, and also for using the information that you gained on a very rocky path in order to make life better, easier, and healthier for other people. I very much recognize that, and I want to really acknowledge you for doing what you do. I'm sure it's not been easy. And even more so, it is important what you do with all the work and the projects that you are busy with today, and also for sharing this information with us, with the audience today. And maybe we can use that a little bit as a segue, if you agree, to discuss or to talk about a little bit about the well-being driven economy and the project that makes you very passionate and the project that you are currently working on. So maybe we start with a simple definition or entry point. What is a well-being driven economy for you, and what does that project mean to you?
Well, I would like to also continue with the history to bring together the dots. So basically, as I said, I lost my well-being from a psychological point of view. And while I was recovering, I was exploring ways to improve my health, my personal health. But at the same time, I was looking at well-being from a broader perspective. So well-being, not just exclusively about psychological well-being, but also in the sense that it's usually defined by most of the people. So basically, well-being, according to the Spanish dictionary, in Spanish, well-being is defined as all what we need to have a good life. All what we need to have a good life. That encompasses good mental health, psychological well-being, material well-being, personal well-being, emotional well-being, social well-being, and so on and so forth. So well-being is not a word that is very often used in English, but in Spanish we use it quite often. And it's, at least in Colombia, we have like a sense of what it means. And to me, it was important. So while I was recovering from my illnesses, from my difficulties, from my very strong phases in my life, from the very strong phases in my life, I came to look for my well-being, and in the way also for others' well-being. Because while I was recovering, even when at the beginning I didn't know it, I was looking for my well-being. At some point, I was asking myself, what do I really want? Because I was exploring if I should look for another job, if I should look for an MBA, if I should try to found a company, look for an entrepreneurship idea, or work on my personal life, or dedicate some time to other activities. So I was asking myself many questions, and the key question I came to was, what do I really, really want from my heart? And as many of us, my default answer was money. But then I looked at it twice and I said, no, money is not exactly what I am looking for. Some money would help, but it's not what I'm looking for, certainly. So I came back to the question, asked again myself, what do I really want? And then I came to an answer that was according to my principles and what I felt it was right. That it was, I want to be happy and I want others to be happy. And in that statement, I mean, I could rephrase that statement as, I want to have well-being and I want others to have well-being as well. I'm sorry for making all this introduction to answer your question, but now I'm going to come to it. So basically, what is the well-being driven economy, and how do I define it? Why I'm so passionate about this? The well-being driven economy is different things. It's broadly is the initiative I am working on currently. The well-being driven economy explores alternatives to improve our well-being. That means well-being in the broad sense, not just psychologically or from a psychological point of view, well-being in the broad sense. And for exploring that, those alternatives to improve our well-being, the first approach I am exploring is a new economic system paradigm based on technology. That is basically a totally new way of doing things in society, with the strong aim and with the sincere aim to improve our well-being, not just our material well-being, that is what we are currently focused on, but also our emotional, personal, social. How do we evolve from a GDP-based economy to a post-growth economy? How do we improve our democracy? How do we really lives we are truly satisfied with? How do we take care of our health, our work, our passions, our curiosity, our interests? How do we connect better with the people, with our friends? How do we build trust in societies? And so on and so forth. So all those are aspects that sound general in this first description of the well-being driven economy, but that according to my insights and according to the proposed system, I think they could be addressed and they could contribute for us to have a better life. So all these are the reasons why I am so passionate about it. I'm coming in a way from health for me to well-being for everybody, so to say. Because initially I was improving my well-being exclusively, and then I came to think about well-being in a broad sense, because well, on the way to looking for our well-being, I discovered that the economy is the system that provides for our well-being, for society well-being. It makes sense, right? If we are hungry, we get a meal thanks to the economy. So I got also interested on economics on my way, and I learned a bit about economics. And then mixing a bit of life science, a bit of technology, that is my background, and a bit of economics, mixing these three areas, the Wellbeing Driven Economy was born. So again, the Wellbeing Driven Economy is a totally new way to coordinate society, to organize society from a coordination point of view, and provide not just for our material needs, the products and services that we have currently and that we need, but also for our emotional needs, for our social needs, for our health, for taking care of our health on the physical and mental level, and so on and so forth. So that's the well-being driven economy, in some words. I hope I answered your question.
Certainly you did, and I would be very interested because what I understand, what I hear, is that we put well-being over GDP, and especially GDP growth, and well-being has different components. It has the physical and the mental well-being components. There's psychological well-being, there's social well-being, there's economic well-being. There are many different factors, components of well-being that actually comprise happy lives, after all. And you've mentioned the three major pillars of the well-being driven economy, and I would like to detail them a little bit further. So you talked about technology / artificial intelligence, you talked about economics, and you talked about life science. So maybe in whichever order you choose, we can look at those three pillars and understand why they are so important for the well-being driven economy that you suggest.
Okay, first, I'm going to make a brief introduction to then answer your question. So initially, I'm going to describe how the things currently work in our GDP economies. So that's the approach we all know. So basically, we all, as people, as persons, we have needs, right? We get hungry, we get thirsty, we need shelter, we need clothes, and so on and so forth. We need different things. Now, we ourselves are not able to satisfy all those needs on our own. That means if I am taking care of my food, of my shelter, of my clothes, I cannot satisfy efficiently all my needs. I cannot build my house and at the same time harvest potatoes and rice. It's very difficult as an individual. So we as humans, as human race, as humankind, what we have found more efficient so far is that we organize ourselves in institutions, for example, companies, and each institution satisfies one of those needs. And then we exchange the satisfaction of needs, basically exchanging money and exchanging products and services. So at the end, we are helping each other through the mutual satisfaction of needs. And that's how the things currently work in our GDP-based economy. So our economies, the flow of money is coordinating the people in society such that we carry out organized activities to provide for the products and services that we need.
And I suppose also products and services that we want. I would distinguish between what we need and what we want, at least in today's economies. Very much aligned with how you describe it, but I would distinguish that there is also a lot of wants which may or may not be artificially created. But you may continue.
That's a very good point, Ismael, and I would add to agree with you that unfortunately our GDP economies are based on growth. So we learned basically after the Great Recession in 1930, the 1930s, that the way to keep our economies going is to increase consumption. That was the way to rescue the economy from the Great Recession in the 1930s. And now we have to grow our economies endlessly, all the time, increasing GDP endlessly to the infinite. So that causes maybe partially the difference you are mentioning, the products we want, we need, and the products we want. What we really need, and some things that we want, but we really don't need, or some things that we buy because we need to keep the economy going on. So marketing sells it to us and we buy it, but we really don't need it. And they actually are not providing for our happiness or our well-being. So that is related to all the consumption of the is related to the environmental overshooting we're having nowadays that is producing climate change and other effects we don't want. So coming back to your question, after giving many explanations, what the economy is about is not about creating money or producing money. The economy and the economists, they know this very well. The economy is to improve society well-being on a personal and in a society level. So basically, they have a concept that is called utility, and we intend to maximize our utility through the economy. And the utility is a way to represent how much happiness or how much well-being the people are receiving when buying a product or a service in the classical way. So coming from that approach, that the economy is about improving people's well-being. And besides that, while taking care of the environment, I came to a totally new approach on how we could design a system that would provide us with products and services that will provide for our well-being. But besides that, we will not be in the loop of infinitely, endlessly increased GDP based on mainly on material needs, but we will be focused on actually how to improve our well-being. That is what counts. So now I come to your question, finally. So basically, life science, the first pillar of the well-being driven economy, can allow us to get the information about the needs that we have, because at the end, we as humans, we are a very complex bunch of biochemical reactions. So we have things like this, the smartwatch, we have our smartphones on our pockets, and there are many sensors that are already in the market or are being developed that are able to monitor our biosignals, our biomarkers, and even more, the digital traces. Digital traces are the information that we collect through the internet. So when I talk about life science, I'm talking about all the ways in which we can use biosignals, that is vital signs, and biomarkers, for example, hormone levels, to determine, for example, how hungry we are. There is, just to give an example, there is an hormone that is called ghrelin and is nicknamed as the hunger hormone because it correlates pretty well with how hungry we are. So just to give a simple example, if we monitor the ghrelin levels, that hormone level in our blood, we can determine how hungry we are. This is just to give an example. We could already, we have already other ways of doing that. For example, using just digital traces, the information we collect through internet. So we don't need to use techniques like biosignals or biomarkers, but that information could complement the ways in which we could determine or better guess which are the needs of the people. So that's the life science component of the well-being driven economy. Is biomarkers, biosignals, and digital traces. Those are like the sources of information, how we could determine the needs of the people. Of course, the people could also say, I prefer an apple and a pear and so on. But this is a way to incorporate that in the system that we are proposing via the well-being driven economy.
And not to use that for economic profit like it's being done today, because all the data that you have been talking about that is being collected is, as we speak, being used by insurance companies, marketeers, banks, and so forth in order to maximize GDP growth and company profits. But you're suggesting basically that collecting this data, this information, could help us understanding that Fernando likes to eat this and that fruit, and therefore we should create sources of fruit for Fernando, whilst Ismael likes to eat those vegetables more. He prefers that. So basically we are creating different supply channels based on information, just for this very example, so that Fernando has a different food supply than Ismael, which basically make both of us happy or satisfied according to the needs that we have, if I understand that correctly.
Correctly. And I would like to highlight what you said at the beginning, that the idea is to use this for the good of the people, for the good of society. That is at the core of the well-being driven economy. It's not to sell, to tell, hey, Ismael wants salad and Fernando wants fruit, so we will sell them, and then we will become more profitable. No, it's actually, this is just the first step to determine which are the actual needs of the people. And based on that information, how can we create a system that will actually provide for the best way to satisfy our needs, to give you, Ismael, your salad, and me, my fruits, in the best possible way. And what we are doing at the end is maximizing the well-being, our well-being in society. So that's a very good comment, the one you did. And I just would like to add the other pillars of the well-being driven economy, talk a bit about them. Technology, basically artificial intelligence, and economics. So basically, in the well-being driven economy is initially designed or proposed around a machine learning paradigm that is called reinforcement learning. It's simply one of the three machine learning paradigms. Usually people talk about the AI, but AI, artificial intelligence, are many things. It's many things. Now, within artificial intelligence, there is a small group of knowledge, field of knowledge, that is called machine learning. And in machine learning, there are basically three paradigms. One is supervised learning, one is unsupervised learning, and the other one is reinforcement learning. So just to give some hints, reinforcement learning is one of the techniques that is used in ChatGPT. on ChatGPT 4. So it's a very powerful technique. And I came to discover this, to get to know about this technique and to learn about it because I was deeply interested in how can we improve our well-being. So if there are ways to complement this life science pillar we were describing before with this technology approach, such that out of the needs of the people, out of our needs, out of what provides for the most of our well-being, we could organize ourselves in society to best provide for our needs and to best improve society well-being. So it's coming back to the example you gave. If we find out that you like salad and I like fruit, and let's say we are in a group of 10 people, then the system would suggest activities to us, such that you receive your salad, I receive my fruit, but besides that, we will not be producing salad and more fruit for you and for me because we want to sell more and more and increase our profits and increase GDP endlessly. The system would say, hey, Ismael, you had already your salad. Fernando had his fruit. Why don't you go and run in the park? Or why don't you share some interesting thoughts in a podcast? Or why don't you talk about what are you passionate about? Why don't you go swimming? And so on and so forth. And the system that is designed around this artificial intelligence technique will do that because it is actually providing for the best way to improve our well-being. So here we are not maximizing GDP. What we are improving is society well-being, and we can also take care of the environment. So I want to mention also that the well-being driven economy is not just about improving people's well-being, it's also taking care of the environment. So there are ways to use a similar approach to what I am describing to improve not just people's well-being, but also taking care of the environment.
No, absolutely. Let's talk about the environment in a bit, but let's stick with this very example because I had a follow-up question. If we talk about reinforced learning, if we talk about technology, and we stick with our example that I like salad and you like fruit, to which extent would technology or artificial intelligence suggest me that for a balanced nutritional profile in life, I should not only eat salad or only eat fruits? And I think you see where I'm going because we could replace that now with sugar and other components of people's diets. And who would, after all, for you, take the decision what is a nutritious lifestyle? So who would be the one taking the decision? Is it Fernando taking a decision each person should have 80% of this, 20% of that? Or is it Ismael? Or is it the machine in the background? How does that work, and who would take that decision, if that question makes sense?
That's an excellent question, Ismael, because actually the information about what provides for our well-being will come from us, from the people. So let's continue with the example we're talking about. Basically, the system we are proposing would suggest to Ismael at some point, why don't you eat the salad? And then you would read it, I like these salads. I think that this salad is contributing to my well-being 80%. And at some other point, the well-being driven economy, the system would suggest to Ismael again, why don't you eat some chocolate? And you will say, chocolate, that gave me some well-being, but I would rate it rather like 30%. So with the time, the system will learn, hey, when Ismael is healthy and he wants to eat healthy food, he will prefer the salad. when he is kind of, maybe just to give an example, tired or a bit down, he would like some chocolate. So the system will start to detect Ismael is like this. He prefers the salad after a run or before they're having a run, and out one day out of 7, or from time to time, he would like some chocolate. So the system will start to learn which are your preferences. But the one who is decided is Ismael. The one.
How do we deal with substances that create dopamine levels and that are certainly not healthy? Speaking of maybe coffee, maybe cocaine, speaking of drugs, speaking of things, because this preference, I would prefer, like, possibly tell you, I like it a lot because it creates a feeling of something, which is definitely not healthy after all for myself and for the environment I suggest myself with.
That's something similar to what we have nowadays with digital media, right? We get dopamine by clicking, and sometimes we get over addicted to that, and sometimes that's good for making networking, so to keep in contact with friends, but sometimes that is too addictive, almost like a drug, like the examples you are giving. So I think that depends a lot on the way, the mindset we create in society, because currently, if somebody falls in drugs, and we know that drugs are addictive, they fall in a spiral down, and basically it's very difficult to get out of it. So I think the way of dealing with that is not, there is no economy that could prevent that. So that happens with the GDP-based economy and with the well-being driven economy. At the end, we, the people, our way of thinking, our way of living is key, because it's not just the economy what solves all our issues, and we have no way to do things wrong or to take a bad decision. We need to create a new mindset, just another mindset, so to say it, to live healthier lives, to live happier lives, to live lives where we are more fulfilled with, to live lives where we can achieve self-actualization in Maslow terms. So I think we have to the well-being driven economy is not just about the technology or the approach I'm proposing. It's a new mindset for society, for the people. It's forgetting about increasing GDP and starting to think about increasing well-being, focusing on how to live healthier lives, happier lives, truly happier and truly healthier lives, not based on drugs or things that we start to recognize that are not good. So with the time, I think we, now an idea came to my mind. With the time, we should work out that society mindset. But now that I was thinking about this, there was another idea that came to my mind that could address that from the well-being driven economy system point of view, is that the system would start to notice, hey, this guy, he started to consume drugs, for example, the example you gave, and the system would start to notice he likes more drugs and more drugs and more drugs. At some point, the system would notice, hey, this guy is destroyed. His well-being is going down drastically. He's not even in well-being anymore. He's in a discomfort, in a permanent discomfort. At some point, this guy will get sick and could die. So the system would say, that was not the right decision. Suggesting giving drugs to these people at the end is diminishing society well-being because the guy died, the guy got sick, the guy got a lot of pain in the way. So in the long term, because the system is not just looking at the short-term well-being, but at the long-term average. So it could be, or at least that's my hope from the insights I have, that the system could, in the long term, also start to recognize these patterns and try to lead people through the healthy lifestyle. So telling them, well, people that are like Ismael, they tend to like salad, and salad is doing is good for their lives. Now and then, also some chocolate, fine. But the people the system would start to learn, and the more it learns, the better it would become. That would be the vision, the long-term vision.
And what I hear is that it basically also would help to create more healthy environments where we need less coping mechanisms, healthier ones, and the very unhealthy ones that we've described. So, yeah, I think that makes good sense. Now, we've talked about life science and we've talked about artificial intelligence. Let's talk about economics if you want, or you want something else to add before we go there. That is also fine, of course.
Thanks, Ismael. Well, economics, I'm not an economist. I just have borrowed the utility concepts, the way how the economy, the GDP economies work, and so on. So I learned some economics. I read a bit about supply and demand and the 6 premises that need to be fulfilled for the GDP economy to bring us to a Pareto outcome, to a good outcome in society, to the ideal outcome in society. But if you don't mind, I would like to shortly come back to your previous statement. How can we address the ecological overshooting we are having now? How could we take care of the environment well-being also via the well-being driven economy? So the approach is similar to the one I was describing for the people. In the case of the people, we were saying Ismael has these preferences to provide for his well-being. We are going to give him the salad he wants. We are going to give Fernando the fruit he wants, and we close the loop. When you eat the salad, you said, yes, I like it this much. When I eat the fruit, we said, I like it this much. And that could evolve also over time. In the case of the planet, making now the analogy, we would also say, hey, for example, when the CO2 levels is between level A and level B, the temperatures are in the atmosphere temperatures, the average atmosphere temperature is in a good range. I mean, if we have too much CO2, we have global warming and so on, but we could determine if the CO2 levels in the atmosphere are between A and B, the planet should be doing right. And that would be like the preference for the planet to eat salad, because it keeps the planet healthy. So we should determine in advance if the CO2 levels is between A and B, then climate change should be under control. And the same we could do for the different pollution materials. It will be like keeping track of the biosignals and the biomarkers of the planet. And if we keep those CO2 levels or other component levels, other pollution, chemical or any other substance in the atmosphere under control, then we would keep our environment also healthy.
Which reminds me quite a bit of donut economics, where you talk about exactly that. You have the planetary boundaries that you don't want to overshoot. So basically, we could use data and technology to estimate where do we stand with each and every of our planetary boundaries. And on the other hand, you could basically talk about the social surface, where we discuss, okay, each and every Fernando and Ismael and all the other 8 billion people on this very planet should have access to XYZ in order to actually generate a well-being for themselves physically, mentally, and so many things.
Exactly. So the idea is to create a system, a new economy based on technology that would allow us to take care of the people's well-being and the environment's well-being. So when we produce the salad, the system would start to notice, it's produced well-being for Ismael, but the CO2 levels, they are going a bit high. Slowly, that's not that easy nowadays, but that would be the insights I would give on how the system would work. And I also have to say, the Wellbeing Driven Economy is not a system. We don't have the technology to implement it tomorrow for 8 billion people. But what we can do with the technology available already now is to simulate in a sample economy, in a little economy, how would the system work? And that is what I would like to do as next step in this initiative, besides the dissemination we are doing with podcasts, webinars, and this kind of thing.
And I very much like that thread, and I would like to use it and maybe change a little bit the narrative that we're creating today about what are necessary concrete steps towards a well-being driven economy. So what is it that you envision, but also want to put into practice? Now, you talked about sample economies, you talked about not 8 billion people, but N people. And maybe you can talk to that. Like, how do you envision to transform society, or your small neighborhood in Vienna, or my small neighborhood wherever I am listening to this podcast, towards a well-being driven economy?
That's a key question. I think there are two big components. One is the technology approach. We need to develop technology further. At this point, we can show in a little sample economy, in an economy instance, how would the system work for a very simple economy. But to extend that on a global level, we need to further develop these techniques. We need to explore new techniques, explore them, expand them, and so on. So there is the technology side that needs to be developed. On the other hand, we have the mindset that is key and is very important, because we need to shift our mindset from a GDP-based economy to a well-being driven economy. We need to shift our mindset from the paradigms we have held for the last 200 years since Adam Smith, to a new way of thinking, a new way of living, a new way of acting, a way that is more cooperative, where we are actually helping each other, because we know that if I help you and you help me, we both are better on a social level and on a personal level. So it's a new paradigm shift. It's on the mindset side, I don't know which one is more challenging. Maybe the mindset side could be something we cannot change like a switch. So I think the technology will come. So now currently what I am doing is like painting the vision, describing the vision, painting the dream. And I know that there are very clever, intelligent people in the world, and they will start to think, and they will come with new technology and new ideas, and technology will develop. We humans, we are very creative, very ingenious, technology at some point will develop. Now, changing our mindset, upgrading our mindset, evolving our mindset from a situation in which we have currently, for example, different groupings in the world, everybody pushing or pulling towards their sides, to a situation where we can work together as a unified humanity, thinking on we as people, we as humankind, instead of me as person. That's a new paradigm shift. So it's not, the Wellbeing Driven Economy is not just proposing a new paradigm shift on the way to carry out our economies. It's also a mindset shift. It's how can we live better lives as society and as person, as people, as individual, and as group of people, as community. How can we take care of a good balance between collaboration and self-interest? How can we be selfish, but at the same time cooperate with others to improve our well-being in the best possible way? That's the idea.
So, how do we deflate polarization and how do we, in fact, change those mindsets? Is it storytelling? Is it information sharing? Is it living by example? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a huge task. It's very challenging. I think what I have learned these few months working in this initiative is that we need to experiment. So we don't have the final solution, but we know storytelling, as you say, is a way. We need to disseminate these ideas. We need to keep the conversation on society going on. Just having this podcast with you is an opportunity to disseminate these ideas, to share them with other people, to start to discuss with your friend. Hey guys, what do you think if we don't focus on increasing GDP, but work on an economy that provides for more love in society, for more empathy, for more kindness? How we need to keep the discussion going on. We need to keep this conversation going on different channels. This is also one reason why I'm doing all this. We need to tell an history via podcasts, webinars. It's not just me. Don't think about me. Think the well-being driven economy. Think even don't think the well-being driven economy. Think how do we really improve our lives? How do we live lives where our well-being is truly improving, where we are being able to live lives that we truly love, that we are developing ourselves better in the Maslow pyramid of needs, that how can we achieve truly fulfilling lives in all sense, material, social, emotional, and so on and so forth. So I think is having a narrative, having maybe a short narrative and repeating it, keeping the conversation going, leading by example. Sometimes we will make failures, of course, but leading by example, creating communities, keeping the discussion going on, and slowly addressing this topic in, I don't know, conferences, meetings, webinars, podcasts, social media, sharing, commenting, asking questions, giving feedback. This is not the final solution for all our problems. There are issues, there are risks. Exactly. It's a seed idea. It's a seed idea. It's a seed idea, but if we plant it, if we put some water in it, maybe it can grow as a tree that give us all shadow and help us improving our well-being as society and as individuals.
And to stay with the seed metaphor, I would like to take a look at some small actual trees that have already been created. You and myself are both part of the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, and there are 5 countries currently being called Wellbeing Economies. This is Scotland, Wales, New Zealand, Iceland, and Finland, and Canada is officially interested. I would be very interested to hear from you, Fernando. Where does a well-being economy overlap with the well-being driven economy, and where does it differ? So maybe we start with the commonalities, and then you can also say or describe where the well-being driven economy maybe is particularly or unique, distinct, if we compare it to the definition of well-being economy that we have already out there.
Mhm. The Wellbeing Economy Alliance is doing a great work, not just with the countries you are mentioning, but with society all over the world. And the main definition of a well-being economy is an economy that serves the people and the planet, and not the other way around. A friend from the Wellbeing Driven Economy said, we're building an economy for the poets, in the sense that we are building a more kinder society, a society of love, of kindness, of well-being, because it's emotional, those emotional feelings are also part of our human well-being. It's not that I'm saying empty words, it's we need to somebody to hold our backs, and we need to hold the backs of others to be healthier and happier. That's supported by scientific outcomes. If we have good social relationships, we are healthier and happier. So those things are key for a well-being economy, and that those things are part of what would be common and between the well-being economy and the well-being driven economy. So we share a lot of characteristics and approaches, and I think the best soil to put that seed I have found so far is the Wellbeing Economy Alliance. There are many other groups I am also thankful and happy to be in contact with, but there is a strong overlap between the Wellbeing Economy Alliance and the Wellbeing Alliance, the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, and the Wellbeing Driven Economy. Now, what would be different? I think the approach that we are proposing with the Wellbeing Driven Economy is novel, is new, is a new way of doing things. It's a new paradigm, not just from a technological point of view, but as said, from a mindset point of view. It's a new way of living, new way of doing things in society. I have to say, there are some words that are similar to the ideas that we are proposing. There is a work by Salesforce that I want to recall here. They are basically proposing to do, they are using the same artificial intelligence technique, the same machine learning paradigm, but on top of the GDP-based economy. What we are proposing is to use this technique, but on a different setup, in a more basic setup. So it's not on top of the inherited GDP-based economy with the goods and the bads, but we are proposing to do it from the raw perspective. And having this raw perspective allows us to have more degrees of freedom, to have more flexibility, and hopefully achieve a better outcome than the one that is achieved on top of the GDP-based economy.
Understood. Thank you very much for all that elaboration and all that information, Fernando. And I have a couple of questions that I ask each and every of my podcast guests. But before we go there, is there any topic or any theme or any detail that you distinguish we haven't talked about enough today and that you would like to shine light on?
Yes, very briefly, tips for the people to keep healthy and avoid mental health issues. These tips come from a professional. I asked him for professional tips, so I am sure about what I'm saying here. First, take omega-3 and omega-6. Seems simple. You get in the pharmacy some omega-3, omega-6 pills. Take them regularly. It seems, according to scientific studies, that helps to keep us mentally healthy. Never ever take drugs. I never did. I felt ill. So that doesn't mean that if you don't take it, you will not fall ill. But if you take them, that significantly increases the chance that you get the mental illness. So never ever take that. If you want to keep healthy and to avoid social issues in other topics related to that. That's horrible. Don't do that. Never ever. Then try to control the stress levels in your life. If you see that there is some over stress going on in your life, maybe it's social, maybe it's in your relationship, maybe it's at work, maybe some economic worries, try to control the overstress, maybe a security issue. Try to be mindful, try to keep your peace of mind always. I know it's difficult sometimes, but watch out on that. Keep your stress, let's keep our stress levels at bearable levels, not too much stress. Let's control it via mindfulness. Let's take walks. Let's eat healthy, sleep well. That's another tip. That comes from me. Sleep well is key to be healthy on a physical and on a mental side. Sleep key is very, very important. Sleep on average 7-8 hours. Depends on how old the people are, but sleeping well is very, very important.
Thank you very much. I think all of them are very important hints and tips, I want to call them, for a healthier life on the physical, but also on the mental level. And Fernando, maybe that brings us to the last final 3 questions of today's podcast episode. And my first question for you is, what is it that makes you hopeful?
Hopeful about something in particular, or in general, what makes me hopeful?
I don't know what you're hopeful for. You may choose to answer that question the way you like.
Okay. I really trust humanity. I really trust humanity and history. So when we look at how things have evolved during the last days, maybe there are some bad issues, but when we look at the trends over years, over decades, I really trust humanity and history. I think that we as humanity, as humankind, we are wise sometimes not on the short term, but sometimes but when we look at the long time trend, we try to take the good decisions as society in different aspects of our life. So I trust humanity and I trust history, and that makes me hopeful.
I think trust is a very important characteristic to have, especially in those days. So thank you very much for sharing that. Fernando, who are your mentors and whom do you look up to personally?
I have known many people through my life, not just talking about the Wellbeing Driven Economy initiative. I have people who I have not labeled as mentor, but I have learned from them. uncles, my brother, my parents, professionals, colleagues, bosses, some kind person you meet on the street, somebody who makes an act of kindness, somebody with a beautiful soul, with a nice personality. I don't have like one individual, but I have met a lot of people who have helped me and give me guidance with their way of thinking, doing, and saying things sometimes. So I'm thankful to all of them.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And maybe another big shout out to your brother and everybody who was there and close when you were in very difficult times. Once more, thank you very much for sharing that, being open, being vulnerable, Fernando. And it leads me to the last and final question of today's podcast, anyways. And it's a rather hypothetical one. I call it the 3 truths. So I would like you to imagine that you are traveling in space all by yourself, and actually for quite some time. Could be a couple of months, could even be a couple of years. And after all that solo travel, you encounter a human-like species, but they can only process 3 facts or 3 truths about humanity before they decide whether or not they want to get to know us. What is it that you tell them?
Oh, difficult one. I would say I would recall Bertrand Russell. I think he said, "Hate is fool and love is wise." That would be one, or maybe 2. And the other one would be, these guys have had many troubles, but they are doing their best. So trust them.
Love and trust. I very much like that, Fernando. And with that, if there's any final message, final words that you have for our audience today, it's all yours.
I thank you for this opportunity. I don't know if I am allowed to make some ad about the book. We are selling around these ideas. Is it fine for you,
It's
Ismael?
absolutely encouraged, Fernando. Tell us where we can find out more about yourself, about the Wellbeing Driven Economy, and how to reach out to you. Of course, that's very much encouraged.
Thanks. There is a book that is available on Amazon. You can find it under the Wellbeing Driven Economy. There is also a web page, a website. There is a Facebook group under the Wellbeing Driven Economy. You can reach us at admin@twde.org. If you are an economist, if you want to work with us, if you want to explore these ideas further, if you have some related ideas you want to work out together, let's shake hands and let's work together to build a society with more well-being for us all.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Fernando. I'm sure that people will like to reach out. And once more, I want to acknowledge you for everything that you are doing, everything that you have done, and for sharing your story and your passions with us today on the Just Another Mindset podcast. And thank you very much for being a guest, and speak to you very soon again.
Thank you, Ismael. And sorry if at some point I was raising my voice. I was too excited about these topics. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
It's always good to be excited. Fernando, thank you.
Have a nice day.
If you enjoy this podcast and learn from it, please feel free to share this episode with a friend or two, and make sure to subscribe to the Just Another Mindset podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please use the next 10 seconds to give the Just Another Mindset podcast a rating, and know that you will help me to create more meaningful content like this, and also that it will help other people to find this content and get inspired as well. If there is any future topic or guest that you would like to hear more about on the Just Another Mindset podcast, please let me know by leaving a comment on YouTube or sending a mail directly to contact@ismaelwondergarten.com. And if nobody told you lately, be reminded that you are worthy, you matter, and you can achieve anything.
Do more of what makes you happy.
Be yourself positive.
Change.
Just another mindset.